Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Nobu with Nobu, the All-American Shaman. Nobu, how you feeling?
Good. Thanks for having me, brother.
Thanks for being here. So we're going to have an episode on Bufo, which is the ceremony at which I met you. I think that we shared that with the audience on the How JT Met Nobu episode. But maybe you could kick it off for us and describe perhaps what is Bufo and where it comes from.
Bufo is otherwise known as Bufo alvarius, the toad, 5-MeO-DMT, is from the Sonoran desert toad or Colorado river toad, different names. I've also heard it called jaguar. Some people refer to Bufo as jaguar. I've only met like 3 people call it that, but still. And going back to the molecule of 5-MeO-DMT, so DMT, dimethyltryptamine, is what people experience with ayahuasca or changa, or with the disposable vape pens that people will buy, or like, purified DMT that can be extracted from Syrian rue, or other such plants which produce it or have alkaloids within my family. But 5-MeO-DMT, and I can't tell you off the top of my head what the MEO chemical means and what it stands for, but essentially, I always tell you it's like if ayahuasca, if we have this scale of different plant medicines, like alcohol, tobacco, cannabis, mushrooms, LSD, ayahuasca, iboga, and then bufo. And this isn't a linear scale. It's logarithmic. So like with each progression, we get increasingly steeper. So I don't say this with exaggeration when I say that bufo is like 10 times, 100 times more potent than ayahuasca, and changa, in terms of its profound transformative effects and the ability to open up one's consciousness and dissolve one's ego into everything and nothing at the same time. Which again, that very aspect of itself allows for massive rebirth and transformation cycles. Because going back to the pharmacology again, when we're born and when we die, we release DMT in the brain. So there's already this, it's called the spirit molecule for a reason. There's always this correlation between this molecule that we endogenously produce and can also stimulate its release through breath work naturally, along like tantra, or even giving birth can release DMT for the mother as well. But it allows for that rebirth process because again, it's simulating dying and being reborn. It's in parallel there. The spiritual's in parallel with the physical molecular. So my initial, I don't want to go too much further, but I gotta say my initial experience again with the toad was what caused me to go through my massive like transformation. Again, like it was a 180, man. Like I've said to learn before, like I was a Sith Lord. I was very aggressive. I was hostile. I was living in a war in my own mind and heart. And Bufo just completely flipped the script for me. It wasn't easy. It wasn't this most pleasant experience. But it was necessary. I think I'll just close on that for now.
Yeah, plenty of things we can pick up from there. So I know we've talked about DMT naturally occurring in the human body. I think on the dreams episode, you mentioned it's also kind of tied to the dream state as well. Like what kind of maybe amounts or like levels are in the body naturally or like get released kind of during that dream state? And then what are we talking about as far as dosage when you're going into like a ceremony with it? Like what's like the comparison there? Like how much gets released kind of like on a natural thing or during birth, and then like during a ceremony it's like kind of exponentially different that in that way as well? Is that why it has such a profound effect?
I can't tell you for certain any sort of data as far as like how much the body and endogenously releases during sleep or whatnot. Although again, what causes reactivations with Bufo generally for people with sleep is melatonin. Again, melatonin and cannabis can cause reactivations, or even just toning or a lot of high energy work or going into a trance state can reactivate the medicine. I would say probably about half the nights I go to sleep, I get reactivated with Bufo to some capacity. And I'm aware of it. Like I just breathe and feel and just, whatever lesson, whatever journey, whatever experience I'm supposed to have, I go through it. And that's that. But I know intuitively that the amount that we experience with Bufo, an exogenous source, is substantially larger amounts of DMT than what we experience, within. And then again, as far as like a typical dose of actual like Bufo, not 5-MeO DMT, because Bufo isn't just 5-MeO. That's the primary psychedelic compound within it, but also bufotenin is found within Bufo, and it has properties as far as like its protective mechanism for the toad. But I also find that there's medicine in that Bufo toxin. So again, the dose
Mm,
makes the poison. And on that note too, as far as like doses go, like 10 milligrams of Bufo, like the venom, is a typical dose for most people. It says it doesn't take much, does not take much. 50 milligrams for like larger males. I was the exception when Susie Calypso, thank you, Susie, when she first she served me, I think it was like 160 milligrams, which was like a obscene dose. And,
right.
I still didn't go unconscious, which I have my own, uh, reasons for that, but that's another topic for another day as far as, psychedelic experiences and walking in the dream state. But which
Mm.
also segues over to ayahuasca. Ayahuasca puts people in that theta brainwave frequency state. And that's also why, again, the veil center, which is similar to the dream state. So I know I darted around a little bit, but it all connects in a spider web.
Yeah, yeah. Something that kind of came up in my mind. We had described on the combo episode kind of its historical usage, and like in the indigenous culture, like they were using it for going into battle with combo to kind of get into this like focused and warrior clear mindset for a hunt. Is there a similar story with Bufo and kind of how that was used traditionally?
There's a lot of conflicting information. There's people who say that certain tribes, in Mexico, like Sonora, used it. Uh, I personally think that the Sonora people probably have been using it for a while. And also too, when I think about the energy of the toad in itself, I wouldn't be surprised if it was trying to keep itself secret as well to a certain capacity in terms of so much misinformation surrounding its
Mm,
origins and usage. What I got told when Susie first served me was that it was discovered by Texas Ranger. It was discovered in America by Texas Ranger in 1984. And again, there's Sonoran desert toads in Mexico, and they're also in the Southwest of the United States. And I don't know when people found out, like realized, oh, like we can extract this again excretion from it and smoke it and have this experience because ingested, if you just ingested Bufo, it would kill you. Uh,
mm.
heart attack, stroke. Um, so because again, it's this defensive mechanism for the toad. So I don't know. I genuinely don't know. And quite frankly, I think that's also part of the beauty because again, I will stand by it saying it is the most powerful plant medicine because it shouldn't be just like how I feel like ayahuasca has gotten boxed into a certain culture and where people say like, oh, you're culturally appropriating this medicine if you use it because you're not using our Icaros, our way of life, and you're not connected to this land.
Mm.
You know, I personally believe that medicine is for everyone from all continents, from all walks of life, from all paths. And so the toad keeping its obscurity in terms of like truly knowing like where it's from or how it was used, I think is good.
Yeah, no one can kind of claim it as their own and thus try to exclude others from using it. We've talked about other plant and animal medicines as being more on the masculine or feminine side. I think you referenced earlier in a different episode that it's Bufo is perhaps more masculine. Could you talk through the kind of energy and spirit behind it?
One, the intensity of the experience is just very again, it is the closest medicine to Christ consciousness, to a 5D state of being, to absolute uh no longer seeing the separation between self and other and experiencing again all things and as self as time, which again is the very nature of that solar energy just to shine down on and to be, again, it is feminine too, but again, like primarily I experienced in that way. Again, and also in terms of it's similar to iboga and also tobacco in the ways that sometimes like it will just put you through what from the outside experience of people watching, it looks like you're getting put through an exorcism where people are thrashing on the ground, they're puking their guts up, which is only like 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes. But while you're in it, those who know, like it feels like everything, time is completely distorted. You know, your sensations in your body, panesthesia, interpreting different sensory perceptions as others. Um, and again, I think like that, just the pure speed of it is just also the very masculine element of it. Because again, the feminine is much more about, you know, in terms of the female aspect of reproduction and the male. Female is very slow, like a long, laborious, like progress of love, whereas the masculine, it's like you're really your job's really only for about 15 minutes. In the
Right.
broader scope of the experience, like you really have like a small role to play. And the
Right.
same thing with like the plants and the earth, like the sun, only really hits some of those certain areas for like sun while it's summer, but it does the job for provides enough energy to last till the next year, while
Mm.
the earth holds on to that and, distributes it. So does that sufficiently answer the masculine and feminine aspect?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned it's like 15 to 30 minutes and then like the ego dissolution and kind of like bringing things up that you maybe aren't able to perceive otherwise. Could you maybe talk about like the mechanics at play there, kind of like what, and I think I've heard it put before of like these filters that kind of exist in your frontal lobes aren't necessarily doing their job of filtering out a bunch of these other external stimuli. So you kind of just get all of this data flooding in that normally you wouldn't be able to perceive. Could you maybe describe kind of like what other things are at play and kind of how that ego dissolution happens?
So there's a good image online of like the observer and the observer, the same where like it shows like it's a hand drawing, the person's looking at a tree or a flower, and it also shows energy going back. Because again, where attention goes, energy flows. So with that being said, when we stop seeing just the self and we start experiencing stuff through the lens of other beings, and even just feeling like you're in their body, which I've had it happen before, Bufo, of like feeling like, and again, that's also why it's so potent for healing. Again, for me as a shaman, because again, it gets my ego out of the way so I can feel someone's pain and hurt and blockages in their entirety, which again isn't always pleasant for me. I puke and purge in my own ways at times, again, with whether it be through the rhymes, the different frequencies I utilize. But by making myself more malleable and less Nobu and more of just that, I am able to again become that which I am working on and with,
Mm.
right? So again, going back to that one thing I sent you before about the shaman, like changes the frequency of himself, which changes the frequency of the patient. Again, by
Right.
having that ego dissolution just so rapidly at play, it makes it so much easier to do so. It makes it 100 times easier to do my work. No exaggeration. Like Bufo just makes everything my work so much easier. Um, in terms of getting results. Now, again, in terms of the intensity experience, it's much more difficult because why? And this goes back to like why you're seeing and feeling so much at once. Serotonin is going through the roof. Again, don't engage with Bufo if you're using MAOIs, SSRIs, you know, um, anything that's going to mess with your serotonin receptors or monoxamine inhibitors. And that increase in serotonin, going back to like when I talked about seeing the kitchen, seeing the bathroom mirror, and seeing the stains on it when you have like a microdose of mushrooms. Bufo is just ramping the serotonin through the freaking roof. I don't even. I mean, my eyes will sometimes like just turn just completely black, like how dilated they are. But again, taking in so much more information, and then on top of
Mm.
that, just like mushrooms and iboga and these serotonin enhancing ones, increasing neural crosstalk within the brain. So parts of the brain that aren't normally talking to each other are now talking to each other. So not only we are, you know, getting more information, we're also able to process more information, which again leads to, and I tell you this, like, don't try to understand your experience right away. This is what integration is for. And it's a prolonged experience of integrating. every experience, but especially with a plant medicine one. And so the ability to navigate that mess also falls on the shaman, because if I'm seeing during that experience, I'm seeing different animal spirits, or I'm feeling discomfort in certain parts of my body, then I know that I need to use different tools corresponding with that to get my patient to, homeostasis or clear. Does that get everything?
Yeah, yeah, and actually, because kind of as you were saying that with like the crosstalk and the different like impacts of your neuroplasticity and physiology and things like that. I know that certain plant medicines like iboga and ibogaine like is kind of conversation now on like PTSD. Like, is there a particular use case that people typically use Bufo for, or is it kind of like a wide range of applications as far as maybe like more spiritual growth and healing?
I would say it's a wide range. Bufo is being used in clinical environments in Washington. I know they were doing like white boxed in room sessions where they even have like just a vacuum that sucks up the fumes. It doesn't even go into the room. And they're prescribing it for somatic release and trauma. Again, understanding it's stored in the body. Also, side note too, when I use Bufo, I also become hyper flexible because the fascia are an extension again of the nervous system. And so when we don't think, because the fascia are limited by how far they can go by the brain, so when you get in that hyper malleable mental state, you also reach a hyper flexible physical state as well. But
Mm,
going back to your question, addiction, trauma, purification, reset. Uh, Again, the biggest thing I again just say is just rebirth, death, and rebirth, which hits really just everything. Because if you want to end an addiction, you need to put that thing to rest, right? You need to kill off. I know people like to when I say kill. Oh, I'm a healer, but like healing and killing in my work go hand in hand. Um, and so being willing to kill off the parts of oneself that no longer serve them, you know, and that often results in during the process of it being manifested in a much more intense form. I've seen it before myself and other people again, like where men are screaming and they look like a freaking gorilla on the mat while they're in their process, you know, and or where women like are orgasming, and like having like a pleasurable experience. Like what needs to come out to be purged or to experienced will come out, and no matter what it is. So again, also with addictions, like when we go to the root of addiction, often that emotional or spiritual reason will come to the surface as well,
mm.
which again can be found within their bodily behavior, between just my own intuition in terms of like what frequencies they need to respond to best. Um, yeah, I think that does it.
And then you mentioned kind of like a rocket ship to Christ consciousness or like this Buddha frequency or whatnot. So kind of makes me think that with this maybe neuroplasticity and this rush of hormones or like serotonin and these different chemicals in our body, is that changing the vibration or the frequency with which our kind of energetic field is resonating at, like kind of temporarily, and then once it kind of wears off, then you kind of just go back to where you were. I guess that makes me think that like getting to that higher level state is maybe not as fixed as I might think. Like getting to a level of that consciousness and expanded spiritual state like seems like, oh, if you're not kind of born that way or on some crazy meditation journey for decades, then you'll like never really achieve that. But it seems like with this medicine you can kind of get there, but then like kind of be brought back down. I guess I don't necessarily know what question I'm asking here, but like where's that vibrational change, like how is that being triggered?
So again, just as we are what we eat, you are the music that you beat. Music can change your frequency. What you're wearing can change your frequency. Who you're around can change your frequency. All these different things affect your frequency and your state of consciousness. Um, Bufo is no different. Again, the half life and the experience of it is very short, but again, it is a rocket ship. And every time you come back down, if you're doing things right, you should be a little higher than you were the time before. assuming you are able to properly integrate in that experience. So that means letting go of whatever baggage, blockage, bullshit, parasites, entities that were clinging on, patterns of behavior, mindset, thoughts that were you clinging on to you and you to them, vice versa. So now you're after the experience, you should be, lighter. You should be, you know, and then moving on an upward path in the scales of consciousness. So in my experience, Bufo, it's like that's how it's been. It can bring one backwards. And I had that experience when I was like very new to it. Like I definitely can be addictive if abused, just like Hape, very powerful masculine medicine. But, you know, it's in the way that tobacco is extremely grounding into reality. Bufo provides such high level downloads that if one doesn't have the ability to actually, or isn't actually like taking those downloads and applying them, then you're just going up and to rocket ship for no reason. But for me, like it's like, oh, like I got to download about a field, how to modify this field, or like how to set up my alter space, or how to do this. Again, constantly like I'm working with the medicine and learning with it, and not just being a passive observer. Which isn't to say like I don't just like sit with the medicine and just be and go within. I do, but a lot of my work as a shaman requires that I be conscious, eyes open, moving about and engaging in three-dimensional reality to also facilitate spiritual effects for people.
Mhm. Is there particular, like, dieta ahead of time or, like, certain, intention settings that, you advise before going to a ceremony, and kinda, like, when does that start in, like, the pre-work?
The longer, the better. I've learned throughout my time of working as a healer and with medicine that sometimes people who really need healing the most will not get it if I come on too militant and too strict about things. Um, so like from an ideal world, like I would say 2 weeks before any plant medicine experience of preparing and of having, I would say, removing dense meats, removing other substances, whether it be cannabis, tobacco, alcohol, etc., and just being as clean as possible for Bufo, to interact with his consciousness and his spirit. But people, you gotta meet people where they're at. So like when someone says like, oh, like before a ceremony, like, oh, Nobu, I just had a drink last night. Like, do we have to cancel? I'm not gonna cancel. Like, I'll just again assess them, just like if it was combo. I intuitively dose out people. So if there was any sort of risk or harm potentially, like, I just wouldn't be giving them as much of a dose. And I would just know if they weren't going to be able to sit with it. But
Mm,
99 times out of 100 so far, I just know how to work with someone with where they're at, because you gotta meet people where they're at. Otherwise, if you give people this certain metric, in my opinion, of like, you must do this diet to this and that, like I'm someone who could use this is missing out on it,
mm,
because of something, forgive them if they know how they do. If someone's that sick, they can't adhere to a 2 week change in life. They can't even do a 2 week change in their own life for other things for themselves already. They need someone to come in and meet them halfway with where they're at, to bring them up to that point where they can stand there on 2 feet.
mhm. And then how about, like, the afterwards? I know we talked about integration a bunch on this show, like, what's that kind of, recommendation there? And I know you work with, a bunch of folks too on integration, like, can you kinda talk through that process?
Journaling, 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 writing, creating, painting, dancing, nature. Uh, but like I said, I emphasize the journaling and the writing point the most, is because a lot of times after people's experiences, they're getting all these new downloads and these psychic hits and these profound like epiphanies, awarenesses. But depending on where they were coming at before, again, depending on where they were at the scale, you know, what's coming through now at this frequency to their body and mind that are here. Because again, the medicine's still working even afterwards. Again, assuming you just don't like, rip it out of your system and purge it out. Like, it's gonna be working with you for a while. Uh, this all seems crazy. Like, there's times where like I've just doubted like the downloads I get. And then like when I do finally like listen to the download in the, voice of God, higher self, whatever you want to call it, I'm like, and then like it's like, yeah, you finally listen. Like about time, like I told you to do this. Like you didn't do it. Like I told you. And I'm glad you finally listened. Like you need to stop doubting yourself. And it's this whole like feedback loop of like, listen, freaking be still and know that I am God sort of thing. But so for people, that's why I said journaling, because then it gives people the ability to externalize all that stuff. And then, because if in the heat of the moment, unless they're like working with me, like as far as coaching, like I don't get to them right away. As far as like with my coaching clients, like if someone has like things like I answer, like it doesn't matter if it's not the day we're working together, like I will still, I'll respond and go accordingly. So if someone's having like, oh, like Nobu, like I had this like dream about this buffalo and this owl, like what does this mean? And then I saw like this person there, like I help connect the dots. But if people don't write down the downloads or experiences of the synchronicities, I don't have as much data to work with to help them defrag and move through the experience. And the same thing is what they need to be doing for themselves. You're defragging your consciousness. So you're getting out on paper things that still need to get exercised and let go of. And then you're also then able to see out of that what you actually want to keep and what you want to apply. But again, if people just keep it up here all the time and then they just go in loops, the lesson will continue until the teaching has been learned. So I always tell people like,
Right.
write that shit down.
Yeah, makes sense. How like long of a kind of integration period do you see as like typical, or is it not generalizable? Is it just kind of case by case, like a couple days, couple months, couple years?
It's case by case, but I would say that every experience, but especially every experience with Bufo is a lifelong integration. And
Fair enough. Yeah. Any other things that I'm missing from a general standpoint on the medicine?
now I would like to shift over to like the fields and why I also like how I also use Bufo in application with my fields. And again, also my work as a shaman. So again, I talked about how it increased energy sensitivity. Again, it's increasing your serotonin, it's increasing your crosstalk. Everything is you're more hyper aware. You are more aware of everything, literally. Period. When I say everything, I mean everything. Because again, way back to that Christ consciousness of 5D, all and nothing at once. That when I'm testing out my fields or before when I was testing out other creators, because again, you're so conscious, super conscious in that way, the effects of things become so tangible. Um, it's ridiculous. I mean, like, and then also too, because you're dissolving your ego, you're dissolving that sense of self and that barrier, that filter, like you said. It also enables that those energy tools to work more effectively as well. Because now, again, you guys took a rocket ship, you are at a higher frequency. These things aren't, the fields aren't being slowed down by your ego sense of self and like things getting in the way, which again
Hmm.
isn't always pleasant. Because if a field, like the symbiote of Nobu that I have out in the store has combo in it and Bufo. I've felt the combo aspect of that so many times where like my gut, like I'm like, I have like heartburn, like acid reflux from the combo in that field. And I've tested that
Hmm.
with Bufo and without Bufo. And like Bufo just accelerates. Like I can feel furthermore within the field, like which parts of it are playing the different medicines or different subfields. And the same thing for all my fields. Like when the more complicated they get, when I test them out with Bufo, I can feel and see in real time how the different subfields are within the field, which when I created the field and the audio, I didn't program in, this is going to do this. Like the electric guitar is going to have this influence and the drums going to do this. And like, it just works out that way. Which kind of reminds me of like when I was in school and I did math and I would just know the answer to math questions and my teacher would say, show your work. And I was like, I don't know. I got the right answer, didn't I? Like,
Right.
why does it matter if I can't show you my work? And like the same thing's true for, my work as a shaman with fields as well. Like last night I had an exorcism with a woman and I, used Bufo beforehand and we're talking afterwards, like debriefing, and I'm still in the medicine, but yeah, I'm able to talk and like have a conversation with it. And she's like, yeah, there's still two of them. And I said, Beelzebub and Azrael. And then she immediately said, she's like, the demon said, how the fuck does he know that? Because again, going
She
back to
was
that,
hearing
like,
the demons too. Like she was like
no,
speaking like.
well, she's a medium, so she hears spirits as is, but she hasn't been able to hear ghosts since she got possessed by these two demons. But like, I immediately, once she even just talked about them, that gave me the energy signature within her to just
Mm,
immediately, like Azrael and Beelzebub, like I know, like I see you, like I know, but like a lot of times for me, it's just about getting the scent, again, the
mm,
awareness, the perception. Which again, also on that note, when I made that period, when I started testing that out without even intending for it, it was bilocating my consciousness to different things with and within my three-dimensional awareness and beyond. But I mean, like I was in my room up in the mountains, and again, this isn't with Bufo at all. Like, and I'm experiencing, like seeing out the corner of the wall, like seeing out my pack of toothpicks at myself, which again is an OBE, out of body experience, which again, go back to the Bufo and the DMT and near death experiences. For people to astral travel, project, and again, bilocate their consciousness in any capacity or remote view, you must be willing to forego your sense of self, you know, which is why I chose again the name that for that field, because then you can just be that and you
mm.
can do as you wish with that. But we'll see when we get a sale on that motherfucker.
I'm looking forward to that day, seeing that purchase come through and what results come of it.
but
So, in the other plant medicines, we or talked about kind of the effects on your aura, and like alcohol kind of creates holes in it, and cannabis kind of makes you more psychic. Are there maybe defense mechanisms or other sort of energetic signatures that either make you more vulnerable or more fortified with Bufo? Like any things to be considerate of or aware of going under the medicine?
combo beforehand is a great pairing because combo is a very strong physical and cellular purge, which again I find the poetic hand of God so beautiful because combo is a much smaller, more higher pitched chirping, frog, and it lives up in the trees, higher state of conscious with the monkeys as well. Bring us the whole jaguar monkey dynamic from before we're talking about diet. But then the toad is this like big, like lives low and it goes in the dirt and the dark for 9 months out of the year. That's when it synthesizes the medicine during this period of hibernation as well, which is also very linked to its potency. Um, the gestation period of that medicine in the darkness to go up in consciousness. But
Mm,
the toad being this more masculine, again, more deeper, lower to the ground, is still the one that launches you sky high. But combo and bufo pair extremely well together. Um, Hape or rape after a ceremony with bufo is really good for grounding someone. Again, like I said, with any the medicines I use hape to ground people, especially before I send them on their way in a vehicle. I make sure again I look in their eyes and make sure like, hey, like, are you good to go? And if they're not, then I know they're not. I have more work to do. I need to ground them out or synchronize the hemispheres of their brain. But yeah, cannabis can be used with it. It's only for again, do as I say, not as I do. Before YouTube pauses some more shenanigans, but obviously go about all these things the most legal and responsible and ethical way possible. Uh, Everything I've said is purely hypothetical
for
as a
entertainment,
shaman
for
for
entertainment
entertainment.
purposes only.
But yeah, just do your research, and if you have questions, again, comment below, and I and we will do our best to answer any questions.
Yeah. Yeah, and you mentioned, on the alcohol episode that, like, alcohol kinda wipes the slate clean in a lot of different contexts, and that's true as well with Bufo, right? Like, you said that, the medicine will kinda be with you and work with you as long as you don't remove it, so alcohol removes it?
It can. I've had times where it didn't affect it, and I've had other times where it stripped it out. So I don't know what the difference was, if it's different, alcohols or liquors, but I've had it before where it was fine, and I've had it before where it just wiped it out. Yeah. Don't have a
So if you
concrete
want
answer.
to have the medicine continue, like, maybe don't have
Uh,
that alcoholic drink if you wish to have it stay in your
y-
system longer.
yes. And again, as far as reactivations, if you want to have a reactivation, you know, go go put yourself in a calm area and be mindful with cannabis because again, it can probably cause reactivation or a high dose of melatonin, like in those gummies or like melatonin pills, like 5 milligrams, can also probably
Mm,
cause a reactivation. But yeah, just I think it's also good that people know that there's ways they can wipe it out. They just want to like get a break from it because I know like for some people like one of my first coaching clients was getting constant reactivations and she was getting anxiety from it. But really what was happening was everything that had just been thrown in the air was now coming to the ground. And it was just a massive purge cycle. And she was just having to again feel her freaking feelings that had been repressed and numbed out through Xanax, Vyvanse, and I think it was like she was on a couple psych drugs. And after she was at the ceremony I met you at, after that, couple months of working together, she was off all those drugs. But again,
mm,
during the experience of having the reactivations of being put back in the medicine, she wasn't enjoying, but again, it was happening for her. And that's another thing I just want to reiterate with Bufo. No matter what happens, it is happening for you. Trust the medicine. It has an intelligence. It knows what it's doing. Allow it to work through you and with you, and you will achieve great things if it is meant to be.
mm. Yeah, I've heard that phrase like the medicine will find you. Is that something that you kind of also advise in this rather than people kind of like going out and looking for it just to kind of have it serendipitously come into their consciousness?
Yeah. On that note, yeah, I would have guessed I was gonna be a shaman, dude. Like, I think I've talked about this before, but when I first started doing this, when I got when Jose took me out to do Bufo in California, and I got gifted my ayahuasca retreat, my goal at the time, my intention was just to fix myself because physician need that heal thyself. And I just wanted to get relief from the pain I was in and the suffering on every dimension. But then organically or serendipitously, or cosmically or divinely, as you would call it, I found myself, in possession of medicine with appropriate contacts and everything. Like, really not through much effort or will of my own. Uh, just again fell in place. And that's another thing too, is people have, what this applies to all things. People know in the site, there's no selling of, I don't sell tobacco, I don't sell marijuana, I don't sell bufo, I don't sell combo, I don't sell uh drugs as the government and everyone else would like to say. I don't sell medicine. It is meant to be applied. I'm not a drug dealer. Um, and if you are meant for these things, you need to trust the universe. And I've had people be very pushy with me before and try to coerce me into selling them Bufo. Uh, and it's like, no, like that's not going to happen. Spirit has been very loud with me. That's not me gatekeeping it. That's me keeping it sacred and protecting it and protecting other people too, because people could kill themselves, right? Again, asphyxiation, going into some of the possible risks. Again, if it's contraindicated with current drugs, they can have a heart attack. Asphyxiation through vomiting, people will be on their backs. A lot of times, we as shamans practitioners have to like roll people over in their belly so they can purge, make sure they don't asphyxiate. Um, if people don't hit your head in the fire, various things. So someone who's not prepared and equipped physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually could do more harm than good with Bufo to themselves.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I know you talked about music before we started recording here. Can you talk about the maybe some of the effects your work with Bufo and how that's kind of complementary to the healing power of music?
Well, on that note, no, didn't even try that. Uh, During my first Bufo experience in California, there was like actually it was a handpan and then a singing bowls and tuning forks being used. And I experienced that while I was in the medicine. And in the medicine, again, I could feel within every cell of my body, I could feel the healing effect that they were having on my body in real time. Which, as in the midst of my first experience, I was just absolutely mind blown as I'm the white light and just dissolving and, getting past the first phase, which was scary for a lot of people. Cause I went through a lot of, I have a poem written about that. Maybe we could pin it in this video, but about my first experience. But I was very scary to get through my rebirth and death cycle. But anyways, so again, going back to the increasing the neuroplasticity and the serotonin, the crosstalking, and that panesthesia, the overlaying, or synesthesia, the overlaying of the senses. My ability to play music with Bufo is just freaking. I don't want to like sound fool myself, but like I'm probably like 100 times better with Bufo. Like I could in the medicine, like my drum looks like just a plain face drum, but in the medicine I could tell, and I just intuitively feel like almost like a compass, with the drum being a compass of how like north, south, east, west, and the different animal totems I carry within that, like all have a different energy. How like as I'm playing the music, how it sounds, and how as it sounds is correlating with different healing properties, different animal totems, different directions on the medicine wheel, and all these different synergistic effects all happening simultaneously and at once. Or with the tuning forks of always, and I always have breakthroughs with it too. Like I hadn't, the first time I played the handpan for more than 10 minutes straight was with Bufo, and I asked my dad how many hours he thought he heard me play. And I asked him afterwards, like, how many hours do you think I've practiced on this thing? He's like, oh, I don't know, like 500. And I was like, no. I was like, it's under 10. Actually, it's under 5 hours that I play this thing. But again, like being the vessel, again, part of being the shaman is being the vessel, being able to empty oneself, right? To again take on the energies and healing of other people, places, and things, to become that conduit. And I just knew how to freaking play.
Yeah, it's like I think I've heard it put in like some of these YouTube videos of like kind of quantum leaping to these other timelines where like you already are an expert, and then like bringing that skill set back into the present. You think that's kind of what's going on there?
Yes, multiple things can be true at once, but that definitely is a accurate possibility.
Excellent. Anything else we want to cover on this episode?
No, I think that about does it. Gracias medicinas.
Gracias Medicinas and Gracias Nobu. Any final comments you want to leave the audience with?
Yes. Prayer in a rhyme. And gracias medicinas to the frog and to the toad. And gracias medicinas to every cross and to every road. Thank you, God, for sending me. Thank you for my wrath and mercy.
Amen. Thank you, Nobu, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.